In this session, I want to talk about one of the areas that I am most passionate about, and that's post-event analysis after an event has occurred. How often in your organisations has the same thing happened over and over and over again? And you might sit around and say, why did it happen? And you don't implement any of the reasons or the controls that might have been identified to deal with that. One of the problems that we have in organisations where there might be a blame culture is that people are reticent to actually admit that they've made mistakes because there might be some actions taken against them. So one of the keys to being a learning organisation when it comes to risk and event management is that you need to be a no-blame culture or need to have a no-blame culture. And we've talked a little bit about that when we discussed the risk culture. But the post-event analysis itself is going to ask some fundamental questions. The first is, what happened? What was the event? The next thing that we're going to ask is, why did it happen? What caused that event to occur? And this is the opportunity for you to have a really good hard look at yourselves and your organisations. One of the things that you need to realise is that no event that occurs in an organisation is a single point of failure. What has happened has been a range or a number of controls have failed that have led to that event occurring. So if you're looking for somebody to blame, you're actually taking your eyes off possibly the real causes, which may be cultural. So you really need to have a good hard look and identify all of those causes that led to that. And whether they are systemic, whether they are from the executive, they need to be identified as well as the failures on the front line. We then ask the questions, what were the consequences? And we can refer then back to our risk register where we may have already identified this as a risk and ask ourselves the question, did we adequately identify the consequences? They may have been far worse than we'd anticipated. And as a result, we didn't necessarily treat that risk. We also ask the question, did we respond to the event or the incident in an effective manner? Because we need to understand that the way that we reacted to that particular incident may have prolonged the consequence period. Did we have a business continuity plan in place? Did everybody know what they needed to do in the case of that event? We then ask some fundamental questions about the future. What can we do, if anything, to stop this event happening again in the future? And by doing that, we can actually start to think about what additional controls do we need to put in place, or what do we need to do about strengthening the current controls we've got in place to make sure that it doesn't happen again, or try to avoid it happening again. We also then ask the question, is there anything that we could put in place to minimise the consequences if it happens again? And in doing so, we can actually then think about, well, is there a business continuity plan or a disruption-related plan that we can put in place to reduce the consequences that we felt in this particular risk? So to reiterate, our post-event analysis, which comes for a learning organisation with a no-blame culture. What happened? Why did it happen? What were the consequences as a result of it? Did we respond to the event in an appropriate manner? Are there any controls that we can put in place from now on that can reduce the likelihood of that risk occurring? Are there any controls we can put in place to reduce the consequences if it does happen again? And only by implementing all of those controls and signing off on those controls can we truly say that we have learnt from the mistake that we have made and embedded it into our organisation. And I can guarantee you, if you become a no-blame organisation and systematically conduct post-event analyses after incidents have occurred, the morale within your organisation is going to skyrocket because they will come to you without fear or favour in terms of the things that are likely to go wrong or have gone wrong. What you need to understand is bad news does not get better with time. unlike red wine. So you might have situations where people are actually hiding events that have occurred, and they could get very, very bad and a lot worse before you find out about them. So bring a no-blame culture in, encourage post-event analysis, and yours will be an organisation that people will want to work in. That's all for this session. Let's be careful out there.